Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today, I talked to ESPN Giants reporter Jordan Raanan, and they start a little lap around the NFC East. I'll talk to my Cowboys colleague and I'll talk to my Eagles colleague later on this summer as well. The Giants need to be included when talking about NFC East contenders, but are they real or make-believe? What do they need to do to win the division? What does Jordan think of quarterback Daniel Jones entering a key year? Also, how does Jordan view Washington? I like talking to the other reporters outside this bubble about Washington to provide you a different perspective. You can follow Jordan on Twitter at Jordan Raanan. That's Jordan, Raanan, for some Giants coverage. He's a good follow. And you can check out my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about former Washington tight end Vernon Davis and his goings-on in the movie industry. I also interviewed Davis for the podcast last month. You can give that a listen as well. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. It's summer. Let's get going into it. So let's get to my conversation with ESPN's Jordan Raanan, talking about the New York Giants and how do they threaten Washington. All right, Jordan. So now we may have the two best teams in the division right here. How about what a change from a year ago? But, first of all, how do you assess the Giants, where they're at in the division and their offseason?
Well, here's what you got to say about the Giants. They were right there in the division last year, right? I mean, there's no denying that. They had a chance to win the division in week 17. Obviously, Washington, won, and they won the division, but the Giants were right there. Yep. And then you look at the team, okay? They were awful offensively. You're talking like 31st NFL offensively. Washington had their struggles. The Giants literally scored fewer points than anybody in the NFL but the Jets. Now they come back this year, and they're adding to their offense Saquon Barkley, because he didn't play last year, essentially. Played a game and a half. Kenny Golladay, and their first-round pick, Kadarius Toney. Just talking about, okay, look at those three pieces. You're adding those three pieces to your offense. How can their offense not now be better? Right? So they are a better team. They should be a better team. And then you can go to the things like Jason Garrett's second year, Daniel Jones's third season, second season in the offense. There's reasons to believe there should be at least incremental growth in those regards as well. I mean, I didn't even mention they added Kyle Rudolph too, right? Who's a red zone target at the least, a guy who should be able to contribute. I mean, they made a lot of moves offensively. They signed John Ross, who's a crapshoot, but he's a first-round talent. I mean, they made a ton of moves offensively to make sure their offense is better, and their offense will be better. I mean, I don't know how you can add those guys unless they all get hurt and not expect the offense to be better than a team that, would they average? I think it was like 16 points a game last year or whatever it was. Something that was just brutal. So now the defense, they played great last year for what they were. They might be around the same. I mean, they added some pieces, but they still lack that big edge rusher. They lost that Chase Young Bowl, and that's still the position that you look at on the roster and you say, man, they need that big edge rusher, but they don't really have it. They worked around it last year. Maybe they could do it again this year. But with the offense being better, I think you're looking at the Giants being a better team. They should be better than a 6-win team. Question is, John, you tell me, where do we stand? What wins this division? Is it 9-8? Somebody get to 10-10?
I think somebody gets to 10.
These numbers are crazy, by the way. I can't.
I know it's too awkward for me. 10-7. It just sounds too weird. But I do think one of these teams gets to 10 wins.
Yeah. So I mean, can they get to 10 wins? Sure. I think if everything works out for them, they could probably approach that number. Is it going to be tough? Yeah. But I think we could probably say the same for all three of the teams or that are in that mix for 10. Like, they need a lot to go right? Washington needs a lot to go right. And so does the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys need their defense to be a heck of a lot better in order to get to that number. And then who knows, they just haven't been a good team for a while now.
what with that offense, the one thing you didn't talk about was the offensive line, and that was an issue.
Well, because that's the problem.
Right. And where are they at with that group?
That's the question mark. That offense will be capped by the offensive line. If the offensive line plays well, that could be an easy top half of the league offense with the weapons they have.
Sure.
But the offensive line remains a big concern. It has been for however many years. It's why the Cowboys have long had the Giants number prior to last year. The Eagles had long had the Giants number because those, especially the Eagles, I mean, they would just dominate the Giants up front. Like that was where they were built, and the Giants weren't built that way. So, but you can look at all 5 offensive line positions and still say they're all 5 have question marks. I mean, Andrew Thomas was the number 4 pick last year, but he played terrible in the first half of the season. Played better in the second half, but is he gonna continue that progression? Is he going to be incrementally better? I mean, they need him to be better. The other side, they want to start Matt Parrott at right tackle. 3rd round pick from last year, barely played. Nate Solder's their insurance policy at tackle, but he's likely a swing tackle right now. So this offensive line has a lot of questions, and they just need him to be serviceable, to make a jump, to take steps. And they're hopeful that they can, because it's going to be a really young line. But at the same time, when you're looking at a team that's why, first of all, the Giants have owned Washington lately, right?
It's amazing.
I mean, the only team in the division that they've been able to really win against consistently has been Washington. But the way that the teams are set up now, Washington should be able to have success against the Giants because they're built with that strong defensive front that should be able to dominate the Giants' offensive line.
You would think
it hasn't worked the last 2 years, even though the line's been better for Washington. But so it'll be interesting because that's Washington's strength against Giants' weakness for sure.
When you look at that offense that you brought with Galladay and and Tony and all that, for Daniel Jones, what do they give him that he can really take advantage of? And how did it look this spring? And I know I think they didn't have live drills, right? They were just going on air most of the time, right? So it's hard to really tell, but what do they get? What do they give for him?
We saw a lot of shadow.
Right,
the cornerbacks would run guys, but you weren't allowed to make plays on the ball.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's hard to really come away with anything. And Kadarius Toney, by the way, I saw him finish 1 practice in the entire spring, and he didn't show up for OTAs, which is pretty much unheard of for a rookie.
Yes.
Use the contract thing as a reason, which, quite frankly, you sign waivers. It's something you never heard of in the NFL.
I haven't seen that.
Rookies show up for OTAs, so but you can see when he's on the field, he's a talent. Get the ball in his hands, offensive weapon kind of guy. Whether it's screen passes, jet sweeps, using him at the quarterback position. He was a really, really good high school quarterback. I think these are the things you're looking at being Kadarius Toney's bread and butter his rookie year. And then for Kenny Galladay, again, he wasn't exactly running every single drill. They're taking it easy with him. He basically would run the first rep of every drill, and then you'd see him stand there for a stretch of 10 minutes after that. And it's spring. It's mini camp.
Right.
This is basically a glorified passing camp. He's been working at times with Daniel Jones off to the side. But really what he brings to the Giants and the comparison, and I get it. Usually I poo-poo these comparisons because the Giants love to do these kind of things, and Giants fans, we say, 2007 and 2011, we had this. They started 0-2 then. They could do it now. It's not the same team. But he does bring a lot of the same skills that Plaxico Burress brought to the Giants. He has that size. He has that ability to go make contested catches. He's a really big red zone target. He's not super fast, but he can make plays downfield because he could jump up and make plays over defenders. That's what he brings. That's his skill set. That's what he brings to this offense. And the reason why the Giants felt such a need to go get Kenny Galladay is because that was such a need for this offense. That's specific skill set. Mm-hmm. That number one X receiver who can go up, make tightly contested catches, plays in the air. Because look, They just did not have that. Darian Slayton's like a speed guy. Sterling Shepard was a slot guy. Golden Tate was more of a slot guy. That was kind of the problem. They had two of the same.
Right.
That they would play outside, but those are not big guys at all. I mean, they're both under 6 feet. Darius Slayton, not the biggest guy in the world, more of a long range speedster. So this was a position that they desperately needed to fill. And the only person out there that really filled with those prerequisites, right? Will Fuller's a speedster. I mean, whoever else was out there, I mean, off the top of my head, I'm not remembering. But like, it wasn't, Kenny Golladay was that guy.
Right.
And that's why the Giants paid him what they paid him, because they knew this is the guy that we need in our offense with that skill set. We will pay him. Like, whatever it is, that's his value. We will pay him.
Let's talk about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest place to play fantasy football for big cash prizes. On Underdog Fantasy, you just draft. No need to worry about waivers, lineups, or injuries. Underdog handles it all for you. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app, draft a season-long best ball team, and that's it. No in-season management. They're going to give you $25 when you sign up, so you can take a free shot at a $1 million grand prize in their fantasy football tournament. That's right, you can get a free $25 in bonus cash on Underdog Fantasy if you use the code KEIM, K-E-I-M, when you make your first deposit. I love Underdog because it's just so easy to use. The mobile app is slick, the website is user-friendly, so do what I've been doing. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com, join a league, draft a team, and that's it. You're good for the season. Remember, go to UnderdogFantasy.com, the App Store, or the Google Play Store, sign up with the code KEIM, K-E-I-M, and get a free $25 in bonus cash. Are you buying Daniel Jones year 3?
I'm buying. Well, what do you mean? What is buying Daniel Jones?
Are you buying that? Are you buying that he is the guy, that he can be the guy that leads a team like this and takes them where they need to go?
I'm not sure if he's a real, Super Bowl winning quarterback. I don't think anybody knows that until they do it. Do I think he's a starting quarterback? Yes. Do I think he's better than what we saw last year? Yes. Okay. He had nothing last year. Last year was around him. Last year was just a disaster for the Giants offensively in general. First year of Jason Garrett's offense, not especially innovative. Everything was working against him. Now, I think he will make a jump. Like I said, how do you add those guys and have him play the same level that he did last year? So I think there will be a progression. There will be a jump. Now, he can make all the throws. The question that still remains with Daniel Jones is, how does he handle pressure, right? Is he able to not make the foolish mistakes under pressure? Is he able to slide around and still make plays when he's under pressure? Or does he just panic? That's been the problem a lot the first 2 years. And we could sit here and watch OTAs, mini camp, training camp. None of that means anything with Daniel Jones.
Right.
We're not going to know what Daniel Jones truly is until it's in game action. And you saw an improvement with the turnovers last year. So that was a step in the right direction. He needs to take it one more step and obviously play much better than he did last year. He threw 11 touchdown passes last year.
I know.
I mean, in today's NFL, that is hard.
It's hard.
11 touchdown passes and 14 starts. So
that I was surprised by those numbers.
He'll be better. I mean, I was too. Absolutely. He had a regression last year. It pretty clearly did not play great. He'll tell you that.
Washington fans probably didn't see that regression as much as everybody else did, but it was there. It was there.
But you saw that game in his rookie year 2 years ago. That was the best game of his career. It's funny because the perception of Daniel Jones after his rookie year was pretty good. He had some really good games and flashed a lot. And you're like, okay, he can make that jump. Second year, now the perception is in the other direction because he didn't have as good a year. He struggled the second year. So I think the reality is he's somewhere in between. Good. He can be a good quality starting quarterback, though. I really believe that. I think we'll probably see that this year.
What's your take on Joe Judge? Year 2, going into year 2, what's your take on him?
there's a lot to like with Joe Judge. I mean, I know they went 6-10, and I'll be the first to point that out. But there
all your
was
Twitter followers say that's all you do.
I know. Well, 8 years, John.
I know. Trust me.
There's been one winning season, one of 8.
I always laugh when they say, "Well, someone's negative." Like, do you know what I've been covering?
How many division titles has Washington won the last 8 years, though, or even 10 years?
In the I think it's the same number. It'd be 3.
Well, you know what the Giants is in the last decade?
1? Is it 1? 0. That's right.
Their last division title was 2011, and they went 9-7 and won the Super Bowl. Granted, but
yeah.
But yeah, so it's been a rough little run. But Joe Judge, I mean, you gotta like what you've seen. What I really like about Joe Judge, and you haven't seen this from a lot of the Bill Belichick disciples that came out. They come out, they're trying to be hard asses. They run their system, and they're all over guys. And you hear the bickering, right? You hear guys the second it goes wrong. Joe Judge has a way to relate to players and not just players, to people, right? He's not just I'm going to go in there, do it my way, be Bill Belichick or Nick Saban, and you're going to do it, because he doesn't have 10 rings on his finger. Like, hey, look at guys, you do what I tell you because I got these, So he has to do it in a different way. But the most positive thing is, first, the attention to detail he has is insane. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my life. I'll point something out in a second on that. But also, the buy-in he has from his players. Like, they are bought into what he believes in, what he says, his program that he's building here. So that gives me optimism that the Giants are definitely headed in the right direction. But the reason I said that attention to detail, I believe it was against Washington. Remember there was a crazy play last year and a fumble, and 17 guys on both teams refused to recover the fumble down the sideline?
Yes.
Well, there's a teaching tape from Joe Judge the Giants put out about that play where he was reviewing the film. Just go watch it and listen to how he has teaching points on how to pick up a fumble near the sideline and what arm you're supposed to use and how your feet are supposed to be aligned. And the way that he describes this play, you'll sit there and be like, this is not a normal attention to detail that this guy brings to the table. That's really special teaching. I'm telling you, go find that.
That sounds like a Belichick thing.
It is. I mean, it's a Belichick, Nick Saban thing. I mean, he views himself as a teacher, and this is a perfect example. And the way that he's looking at every little thing to find an advantage in regards to, if he gets his team to play a certain way, even if they have this much of an advantage, at some point that'll come into play and help his team win.
And that's what the best guys do. And it's funny because one of the things that Washington's linemen were doing this offseason, their O-linemen, working on coming off blocks, seeing loose ball, how to recover a fumble. And I put out some video of it. And the first time I put out a video, people thought that their first round pick got hurt because all they do is they saw him go down. I'm like, oh, no, wait a minute. There's a ball there. So I get your concern. But then other people are like, why are they doing that? He's going to get hurt doing that. First of all, you're an athlete. If you get hurt falling down, you're not going to make it in the NFL. But secondly, that's attention to detail too, where you work on these things because that one fumble recovery might be the difference in the game, which could be the difference in your season. So, but last thing here, Jordan, how do you view Washington going at this point, going into the season? How do you view them?
I'm actually a big fan of Washington. I think that defense they're building something really special there. Like that, when you have two pass rushers like that and a defensive line of that ilk, that's how you build, in my opinion, a successful team in this league, and especially on the defensive side, especially obviously. And so they have that. So as long as those guys don't get injured, I mean, I think I picked as my NFC East MVP Chase Young. I mean, he's going to be an absolute stud.
Yeah,
I mean, he's going to be ridiculous. When you have guys like that, the Von Millers of the world, go back to like the Giants, Lawrence Taylors of the world, like guys that are that good as edge rushers, it just makes your team and defense that much better. The Giants had it with Michael Strahan,
right?
Like those guys are different, and their defense, I think, would they finish second in the NFL last year?
Yes, yeah.
Depends on, I guess, what
depends on the metric, but they're a top 5 defense.
Right. And I don't see why they wouldn't be a top 5 defense again. Now, I'm not the biggest Ryan Fitzpatrick fan. Far from it. I don't think if you're ultimately trying to win anything serious, you would want Ryan Fitzpatrick. But I do think when you look at him, I mean, Alex Smith was playing last year with one leg. Taylor Heineke, Kyle Allen. So is he better than those guys? I do think he's better than those guys. I wouldn't want him as my quarterback over a 17-game season. And I'd be a little worried because, hey, Washington has this great defense they're building. Right. But what's their future at the most important position on the field, which you can't really win anything until you solve that position, is they don't have that quarterback position filled. So as an outsider perspective, I like them a lot for this year in a division that's not very good. But until they solve the quarterback dilemma, what are you really winning? Right.
And I think that's something that I think the philosophy was, if you can't find that guy, then keep building the roster. But at some point, you've got to aggressively get that guy. And I think that'll be next offseason. But I think you're right for this year. I think what Fitzpatrick offers them will be better than what they had last at the position. I think the whole group the dynamic will be better as far as because we also saw Dwayne Haskins start 6 games, and they were 1-5 in those games.
I didn't even add in Dwayne Haskins,
and that was brutal. And so but we'll see. But I think like you with the Giants, I think the Giants, I like that team. I like the direction they're going. And I like the direction this team is going. And it could be a fun race for the NFC in a different way than it was last year. Was a fun way from a train wreck standpoint. It's like, who's going to be this year? I think it could
who's the best of the worst, right?
Right. I think at least this year you have 3 teams capable of winning 10 games. And so I think
granted in a 17-game season, but yeah,
right. Well, yeah, but
it's the equivalent of being like 9-7 last year.
But even I think could one of those teams get to 11? I don't know. Then it depends on how the schedule breaks, and this team plays a lot of good quarterbacks this year, and so who knows? But I do think all 3 are capable of that. Which what this means, of course, it means Philly wins the division.
Of course. The odds, though, are kind of strange. The Washington and Dallas are close to even in regards to being the favorites of the division. Both there, whichever one isn't, the odds are really low. The Giants are plus, last I checked, they were at one point plus 450 to win the division, which was pretty big. And then last I checked, that it was like plus 400. I mean, and Philadelphia was like plus 450 for plus 500 at the most. So they were pretty comparable. So I was kind of it's kind of interesting. The Giants don't have that respect, it seems, with the betting public at least.
Well, which is surprising to me because it's not that surprising because they were 6 wins, at least with Washington. They got attention for winning the division, but I think the Giants are going to be right there. I think they can be right there. So I
view it as good value in this case.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, and we'll see you early in the season where I probably picked that game wrong again because I have a long history of picking the Giants-Washington game incorrectly. So it doesn't matter what happens.
Well, I guess you should just pick the Giants.
I know.
They own them. I don't know what it is. The coaches changed, the scheme changed, but the Giants is the only team they've had a ton of success.
And I keep saying, like, every time they play, I'm like, well, they can't possibly sweep them. They're not that good. And then you go out there, it's like, I was an idiot again. And I'm glad my family doesn't make a living on my gambling or my betting choices. So we'd be in big trouble.
Well, I picked the Giants to win the opener last year against Pittsburgh, so I think nobody's taken my no one's taken my advice on those picks either.
There you go. All right, Jordan, thanks a lot, man.
What's up? It's Mike Jones from the Football Jones podcast. I know you're enjoying your time with the John KEIM Report, but once you're done, I want to invite you to come over and check out my podcast. Each week, we take a deep dive into some of the most pressing topics around the NFL. High-profile guests from the coach, player, and front office ranks, as well as the top league insiders. Check out the Football Jones podcast, another fine product brought to you by Empire Media.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jordan for joining me, and thank you, as always, for listening. I'll be back with another podcast later this week. Talk to you next time.